Chapter 68 of The Ice Monster by David Walliams, narrated by me. Chapter 68 Battered and Bruised. Battered and bruised, HMS Victory eventually sailed into calmer waters. An icy wind blew across the ship. They were moving closer and closer to the North Pole. A shout came from the crow's nest. "Iceberg ahoy!" Elsie whispered into the mammoth's ear. "We're getting close, Wooly." The mammoth nodded her head up and down and called out, "Whoo!" Very close. The Admiral expertly navigated HMS Victory through the maze of ice. "Land ahoy!" came another shout from above. "Whoo!" hooted Wooly. Somehow, she knew she was going home. The ship stopped alongside the edge of the ice, causing a huddle of walruses to scatter into the water. Plop, plop, plop. After weeks at sea, the mammoth was eager to step out onto solid ice. Her entire body was swaying with excitement. "Not long now, Wooly," said Elsie. As soon as it was safe, she led her friend down the gangplank and onto the ice. Immediately, the mammoth rolled onto her back, rubbing herself on the snow. Elsie thought it looked like fun, so she joined in too. She even fashioned a snowball, which she lobbed at Wooly. Biff! In return, the mammoth hoovered up some snow with her trunk and sprayed it at the girl. Dotty and Titch looked on from the deck of the Victory like proud grandparents. When Elsie and Wooly both began to tire, the girl decided it was time to say goodbye. She gave her friend the biggest cuddle she could. "I'm going to miss you so much," she whispered in the mammoth's ear. Wooly shook her head. Whatever did the animal mean? She reached out her trunk and took the girl by the hand and began tugging her along. "Wooly wants me to go with her," Elsie called out to those on the ship. "But where?" Chapter 69 Some Kind of Machine. "We're coming too!" exclaimed Dotty, dragging Titch by the hand. Do we have to? I'm freezing," he moaned. "Come on!" The lady dragged her beloved off the ship and onto the ice. "Wait there, please," Dotty called back to the Admiral. "We were going to go straight back to London," replied the Admiral sarcastically. "But now you ask, we'll wait." "Thank you kindly," said the lady. Wooly led her three friends across the ice. Soon they had lost sight of the Victory. "We'll have to try and remember which way we came," remarked Titch. "Yes, turn left at the mound of snow," replied Dotty, unhelpfully. Underneath the ice, there was a sound of something whirring. "Brrr!" It stopped Wooly in her tracks. "Huh!" she cried softly, clearly spooked. "What's that?" said Elsie. "What's what?" said Dotty. "That sound," replied the girl. She put her ear down to the ice. "Maybe it's a killer whale," suggested Titch. Wooly shook her head. "No," replied the girl. "This is some kind of machine." All four stood still and silent. Suddenly, there was a deafening noise and something grinding through the ice. Durr! Ahead of them, a metal nose burst out. "Smash!" "Whoo!" screamed Wooly. "What's that?" gasped Elsie. "It's one of them submarines," replied Titch. "What is it doing here?" asked Elsie. "And who's going to sweep up all the ice?" remarked Dotty. The underwater craft forced its way up to the surface and bobbed on the sea for a moment. "Shall we make a run for it?" suggested Elsie. "Nah, let's stand our ground," replied Titch. "My hero," said Dotty. A hatch opened on top of the submarine, and a pith helmet emerged, followed by a gnarled face, which seemed to have been burned in an explosion. "Well, well, well, fancy meeting you here," snarled the lady. It was Lady Bookshot. She was chomping on a cigar and wielding a shotgun. "Hoo!" cried Willie. "Yes, how peculiar," replied Dotty. "Maybe we should have made a run for it," said Titch. "Thought you'd kill me off, did you?" called out the big game hunter as she stepped down the submarine on the ice. "Thought your little stunt with Tower Bridge was clever, did you?" Mused Dotty. Probably not saying the right thing here, but yes, I did actually." "Silence! You asked the question. It was a rhetorical question." "What's that?" "You don't know what a rhetorical question is?" "No." "Silence! That was also a rhetorical question." "We're going round in circles now." "Right, I'll shoot you first." Elsie stepped in front of Dotty. "Never," said the girl. Titch stepped in front of Elsie. "Never," he said. Then Willie swept them both aside of her trunk. "Hoo!" she hooted at the hunter. "I'll just stay here at the back if that's all right with everyone," announced Dotty. "Oh, for goodness sake," thundered Bookshot, spitting out a cigar and pointing a shotgun at each of them in turn. "I will kill you all!" Chapter 70. Behind you! Bookshot cocked her shotgun. Click! "Don't you fools see how good all your heads would look on my wall?" she called out. I rather like my head attached to my body," Elsie called back, "and so does Willie." "Hoo!" the mammoth nodded in agreement. "Willie," mocked Bookshot. "The monster has a name." "She's not a monster, she's a mammoth," said Dotty. "Oh, a what?" asked Bookshot. "A mammoth! Are you deaf?" "It will take too long to explain," said Elsie. "Fine, I didn't have time anyway. Prepare to die." Titch put his hand up in the air. "Excuse me, lady." "What now?" "There's a polar bear behind you," he lied. "No, there isn't," said Dotty. "Shut up," he hissed. "Yes, there is," Elsie continued to lie. "A really big one." "I'm not falling for that old chestnut," thundered Bookshot. "Hoo!" hooted Willie, pointing with her trunk at the spot where this imaginary bear might be. "Oh, I get it," said Dotty. "There's a really big brown bear, white bear," hissed Titch. "White bear behind you." "It would look great on your wall," added Elsie. Behind her, she could sense the mammoth was straining. "What are you doing, Willie?" whispered Elsie. The mammoth had shut her eyes tight in concentration. Finally, it came. A bottom burp. Grrr! A bottom burp that sounded exactly like the growl of a bear. The noise made Bookshot turn around and look. It gave the gang of four just enough time to rush at her. Titch rugby tackled her, and she fell to the ice. Thump! Oh! Dotty sat on her, and so she was trapped. "Get off me, you peasant!" Next, Elsie snatched the shotgun from her and threw it as far away as she could, so that it landed in deep snow. "Give me that back!" Last, Willie lolloped forward, and with her trunk grabbed the lady by her ankle. "What are you doing, you beast?" Guessing what was to come, Elsie helped Dotty off Bookshot. Then Willie dangled her would-be killer in the air. "Help!" she cried. "Not on your Nelly," said Dotty. The mammoth lifted the hunter higher in the air and began swinging her in circles. "Ah!" yelled Bookshot. The circles became faster and faster. Whirr! Soon, Bookshot became nothing more than a blur. Ah! Now let it go, said Elsie. The mammoth did what she was told to. No! Cried Buckshot as she spun through the air like a boomerang. Whizz! Unlike a boomerang, she didn't come back. Buckshot flew across the Arctic before landing far out of sight with a thud. Thank you, mammoth, said Dotty. That woman was beginning to get on my nerves. Chapter 71. Smothering to Death. Willie led the three humans for many more miles across the ice, north, north, north. As night fell, the entire sky lit up red, green, and purple. Wow, this is beautiful, said Elsie as she stopped still and looked up in wonder. The Northern Lights, they're called, replied Titch. You can only see them if you travel really far north. Well, I went to Yorkshire to visit my Aunt Maud, and I never saw 'em, said Dotty. Titch shook his head. I mean, really far north. So, as far as I'm concerned, Yorkshire is really far north. Took me hours on the train. Now, where's the mammoth taking us? North, replied Elsie. North, north, north. Are there going to be any shops? Asked Dotty. I don't think so, said Titch. I don't need nothing fancy. Just a cup of tea, some sandwiches or cakes. No, just more ice. Shame, Dotty said. I'm getting rather peckish. They climbed to the top of a tall snowdrift and looked down into a valley. How much longer? Moaned Dotty. Whoo! Hooted Willie. She pointed ahead with her trunk before galloping down the drift. Something tells me we're nearly there, replied the girl as she chased after her friend. Hoo! Hoo! Joined in Elsie. Nearly where? Asked Dotty. I don't know, replied Titch. He took her hand and led her down the drift. Ahead, Elsie could see something was sticking out of the snow. On closer inspection, she realised it was a flag. A British flag. Next to it were a series of pegs, making out a large rectangular shape in the ice. It looked almost like a grave. This must be where they found Willie, exclaimed Elsie. Hoo! Hooted the mammoth, miming digging with her foot. Why the blazes has the mammoth brought us all the way here? Grumbled Dotty. There must be a reason, Dotty. Trust me, replied the girl. As if on cue, the coloured lights that were shooting across the sky descended to the ground. The wind whipped up the snow, and soon it whirled all around them. The four were in the centre of a spiralling snowstorm. It became impossible for Elsie, Dotty, and Titch to keep their eyes open, and they hardly could breathe. All they could do was huddle close to the mammoth in fear. This is the end, Dotty, splurted Titch as snow swirled into his mouth. I need to tell you that I... Tell me what? Asked the lady. If you would just let me finish. Willie wouldn't have brought us out here to die, shouted Elsie. There must be a good reason. The mammoth wrapped her trunk around the girl. Whoo! She cried. Hold me close, said Elsie. Please. This felt like the end. The storm moved in. The blizzard was smothering them. They could hardly no longer see, or feel, or hear. Elsie just managed to prise her eyes open for a moment. Huge shapes were appearing out of the snowstorm. Look! Cried Elsie. They were not alone. Chapter 72. A Perfect Circle. A dozen figures were emerging from the storm, as tall and wide as ships. Dotty and Titch struggled to open their eyes. When they did, the most magical sight greeted them. A herd of mammoths. Oh, I wouldn't want to clean up after all that lot, mused Dotty. Is this real? Asked Titch. I don't know, replied Elsie, but it's beautiful. Hoo! Cried Willie. As if by magic, the snowstorm moved outwards from where the gang of four were huddled. They found themselves standing in a perfect circle of calm as a wall of swirling snow surrounded them. Slowly, Willie broke away from the humans and approached the herd. One of the mammoths reached forward and stretched out its trunk. Willie did the same, and the two trunks curled round each other in the most loving way. All the other mammoths lifted up their trunks and let out a chorus of hoos. Hoo! 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 Teardrops ran down Elsie's face. They were happy tears. They were sad tears. Happy because she knew her friend was finally home. Sad because she knew this was a goodbye. Willie turned round and with her trunk beckoned Elsie over. Hoo! The girl took a deep breath and paced through into the deep snow. Willie wrapped her trunk around her friend and pushed her close to the much bigger mammoth in front of them. Elsie was scared at first, but the giant mammoth wrapped her trunk lovingly around the girl. The three of them embraced. Immediately, the girl knew exactly who this was. Willie, it's so great to finally meet your ma, said Elsie, choking back tears. Both animals nodded their heads and let out tender sighs. Whoo! Sounded the larger animal behind them. It was time to go. The herd turned to leave. The mother mammoth gently pushed her offspring towards the girl. There was just time for one last embrace. Elsie buried her head in her friend's fur and wrapped her arms around her. In return, Willie licked the girl's face and with her rough tongue. It was a sweet, if slobbery, kiss. Elsie whispered into the mammoth's ear, I love you, Willie, and I'm never going to forget you. You won't ever forget me, will you? Hoo! Willie sighed. Hoo! Replied Elsie. The girl reached out her hand and stroked Willie's fur as the animal started to move away. This was the very last touch. Elsie watched as one by one the herd faded into a wall of snow. Willie looked back into the last time and waved with her trunk, and then she too disappeared. Tears rolled down Elsie's face as Dotty and Titch put their arms round the girl and held her tight. The storm passed as quickly as it disappeared, leaving the three alone on the Arctic wasteland. Chapter 73. Headlines across the world. If the long sail back to London was sombre, the journey up the Thames was anything but. All the London turned out to watch HMS Victory, which had seen off the entire British naval fleet, make its way along the river. The news of the mammoth's adventures had made headlines all across the world. Police failed to capture ice monster. 100-year-old warship triumphs over entire British Navy. Long-lost professor fished out of Thames. Secret plan to return monster to Arctic. Evil professor behind bars. Locks in cleaning cupboard for a month. Orphan girl brings mammoth back to life. HMS Victory stolen. Monster on the loose. Gangs daring escape from London. Chelsea pensioners break out of Royal Hospital. Folk lined the banks to wave and cheer, and this lifted Elsie's mood a little. During the long voyage, the girl missed her friend terribly. She'd grown accustomed to the mammoth's smell and sound and touch. She yearned for the trunk to be wrapped round her again. It was like a part of her missing. A month or more had gone by since they left London. The ice over the Thames had melted away and HMS Victory made fast progress towards the centre of London. Despite seeing the obvious delight of the crowds, all on board were nervous as the ship came into dock. A pack of policemen, led by Commissioner Barker, of course, were waiting on the riverbank for them. Don't you worry, officers. We only borrowed the Victory. Took her for a quick spin, the Admiral called over. Barker's face soured. His lip quivered in barely disgusted rage, causing his tiny moustache to twitch. "Our orders are to take you straight to Buckingham Palace," he announced. "Her Majesty the Queen wants a word with you." The pensioners all gulped. By the sound of it, they were all in deep, deep trouble. Chapter 74. A fleet of carriages. A fleet of horse-drawn carriages raced across London to Buckingham Palace. Elsie sat between Dotty and Titch in the first one. Both grown-ups looked sick with nerves. Dotty pulled out a handkerchief and spat on it. "Elsie, I just need to give you a quick wash." She then proceeded to furiously polish the girl's face. "Get off me!" yelled Elsie. "You're meeting the Queen! When was the last time you had a bath?" "A what?" "That's what I thought." The fleet of carriages passed through the tall iron gates into the grounds of Buckingham Palace. Elsie, Dotty and Titch all pressed their faces up against the window to get a better look. "Wow!" exclaimed the girl. "It's magnificent," added Titch. "It could be fit for royalty," remarked Dotty. "It is fit for royalty," said Titch. "The royals live in here." "They must come from a very rich family," observed the lady. The carriage stopped outside the entrance to the palace itself. A footman opened the carriage door, and the three stepped out onto the red carpet. All the old soldiers put on their tricorn hats and white gloves, and straightened their scarlet coats. They formed a neat line and marched into Buckingham Palace. Elsie's eyes were dazzled by the riches. Never in her wildest dreams she had believed anyone lived like this. Gold and marble and velvet spread across every space. Oil paintings, sculptures and ornaments lined the hallways. She wanted to stop and marvel at every last one, but there wasn't time. Her Majesty the Queen was waiting. "Needs a good dust," remarked Dotty. "I've counted 3 cobwebs." "Shush!" shushed Titch. Eventually, a tall pair of wooden doors was opened by the Queen's attendant, Abdul. "Her Majesty has been expecting you," he announced. At the far end of the room was a little old lady sitting alone on a chair with a blanket over her knees. Her skin was as white as snow, her dress was black, and her white hair crouched on top of her head in a tidy bun. It was Queen Victoria, unsmiling. She looked Elsie straight in the eye. "So you must be the urchin who stole my mammoth." Chapter 75. An audience with the Queen. For the first time in her life, Elsie was too shy to speak, so she just nodded. "It weren't just her that stole the mammoth," said Dotty. "I done it and all." "Don't forget your manners," hissed the Admiral. "It's I done it and all, ma'am." "Ma'am, not ma'am. It rhymes with ham or jam." "I done it all am," said Dotty. Titch shook his head in despair. "And what gave you the right to break into my natural history museum, bring a long extinct prehistoric animal back to life, and then set it free?" Elsie looked down at her feet. "Well?" pressed the Queen. "I don't know, Ma'am," she replied. "Well, you must have some sort of an idea." The girl looked over to Dotty and Titch, who gave her nods of encouragement. "Well, I suppose—" "Spit it out, child." "Well, I looked at Wooly." "I beg your pardon, who is Wooly?" "Oh, that's the name I gave the mammoth, Ma'am." Queen Victoria gestured for the girl to continue. "Do carry on." "You see, Your Majesty, everyone was calling the mammoth a monster, but I looked on Wooly as a friend." "A friend?" asked the Queen, incredulous. "Yes, a friend. And Like me, she seemed lost without her mother and father. So I wanted to help her find a way home. The Queen listened and nodded her head. Looking at you, child, I take it you are an orphan. Yes, ma'am, replied the girl. I was left on the steps of an orphanage when I was a baby. I never knew me ma or pa. The Queen leaned in. Do you know if they're out there somewhere? No, ma'am. I don't know if they're alive or dead. This hit Queen Victoria like a thunderbolt. She was overcome with emotion. Her eyes closed and she struggled for a breath. Are you all right, Your Majesty? Asked Elsie. The little girl broke strict royal protocol and stepped forward to hold the old lady's hand. Queen Victoria looked down at the grubby little hand holding hers. This simple act of kindness made a tear well in the old lady's eye. Here, use my sleeve, said Elsie, offering her up her arm to wipe the lady's face. This made the Queen smile. You, child, are a very special young lady, said Queen Victoria. The little girl was rather taken aback. No one had ever told her that before. Queen Victoria opened her arms and folded Elsie into them. For a moment, these two people, separated by oceans of age, class, and wealth, held each other tight. It felt like all the world stopped. Thank you, child, said Queen Victoria. I needed that. We both did. It's been a while since anyone has given this old lady a jolly good hug. Being the Queen, no one ever gives you one. Any time, Your Majesty. The pair broke away from each other. Well, began the Queen. The whole world had been following this story in the newspaper, myself included. Little did I know what was behind this extraordinary adventure. A deep and special friendship between an orphan girl and an innocent creature who just needed to find her way home. Elsie nodded. That's right, Your Majesty. This story has moved me. Not least because of all your incredible bravery, so I declare that some prize giving in this order. Mushini? Yes, Your Majesty, replied Abdul. Be a dear and bring me my box of medals. Chapter 76. The Bravest. The Chelsea pensioners all stood proudly to attention. Now, I have something here for all of you, began the Queen, opening the shiny wooden box. For my brave soldiers. And sailor, prompted the Admiral. Oh, and sailor, my apologies, Captain. Admiral, corrected the old man grandly. Well, I asked my commander-in-chief to look into all of you, and I was told you never rose above the rank of captain. The old soldiers all stared at him. Well, the man spluttered. I think there was some sort of mix-up, Your Majesty. Really? Asked the brigadier. I'm the confused one, not you. Yes, I think when I was asked to leave the old sailors' home and arrived at the Royal Hospital, all the old soldiers just started calling me Admiral. Heaven knows why. There were murmurs of, You told us to call you that. Big fat liar. I would love to stick that leg of yours where the sun don't shine. Shark should have swallowed you whole. Does this pub serve any food? Did they indeed? The Queen was not convinced. Well, Captain, approach and collect your medal. Nervously, the man limped over to the Queen. Duff, duff, duff. As he saluted, Queen Victoria pinned the medal to his chest. As head of the British Armed Forces, I hereby promote you to the rank of Admiral. Retired. The newly appointed Admiral turned round and looked at the others smugly. Thank you, Your Majesty. Now get back to your place before I change my mind. Yes, of course, Your Majesty, he replied, limping as fast as his leg would carry him. Duff, 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 duff. One by one, she called all the old soldiers up and pinned medals to their chests. Finally, it was Titch's turn. The old soldier with just one lonely medal, the medal every soldier receives for service. "Well, Private Thomas," began the Queen, "I have learned that your time in the military has not been distinguished. Despite serving in the army for over 50 years, you never rose beyond the rank of private. Somehow, despite being in some of the greatest battles in history, you failed to fire even a single shot." I don't like loud bangs, Your Majesty." "Over the years, Private Thomas, you have been mocked for your stature, but this extraordinary adventure has shown that you are a giant among men." "Do you know what this is?" she asked, dangling the cross-shaped medal. Titch's eyes lit up. Of course, ma'am. That is the highest honour a soldier can receive. The Victoria Cross. I rarely give these out. They only go to the bravest of soldiers. The Victoria Cross goes to you, Private Titch Thomas. And you shall henceforth be known as Private Towering Thomas." The Queen bent down to pin the Victoria Cross onto his chest. Titch looked at it, his eyes welling with tears. Thank you, Your Majesty." As he turned round to face his comrades, they gave him an almighty hurrah! "This just proves, if ever there were any doubt, that heroes come in all shapes and sizes," said the Queen. Private Thomas smiled proudly. Then the Queen turned her attention to Elsie and Dotty. "Of course, heroism isn't something reserved for men only. Look at some of the great heroes of my reign, the founder of modern nursing, known as the Lady of the Lamp, who tended to wounded soldiers. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, the first woman to gain a license to practice medicine. Or Millicent Farquhar. She led the suffragist movement that campaigned for women's right to vote. To name but a few. So I would like to award medals to both of you as well. Dotty?" The lady didn't move. "Dotty!" "Me?" asked Dotty. "Yes, you are called Dotty, aren't you?" "Yes." "Well, approach me then, please." "Now?" "Yes, now." The lady curtsied with every step she took. "Get a move on," ordered the Queen. "Apologies, Jam." Queen Victoria rolled her eyes and went to pin the medal to Dotty's chest. "Let me help you, the Majesty," she said. All fingers and thumbs because of nerves, Dotty managed to stab herself with the pin. "Ow!" "Are you all right?" asked the Queen. "Yes, I'm fine." "Ouch!" Are you sure?" "I just stabbed myself, but I'm fine, really. I'm fine. Owie!" Dotty then retreated, curtsying again with every step. "Now, last but not least, Elsie," said the Queen. The girl curtsied respectfully, and she once again approached the old lady. "Elsie, you have been the bravest of all. Living on the streets of London is brave enough, but you have been the driving force behind this extraordinary adventure. You did all of this, not for yourself, not for personal gain, but to help, in your words, a friend. Elsie, you have shown uncommon valour." Queen Victoria reached into a box for the final medal. Then the girl spoke up. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be rude and that, but I don't want a medal, Ma'am." A gasp echoed around the room. Chapter 77. Never Forget. "You don't want a medal?" spluttered the Queen. "Everyone, but everyone, likes medals." "All I want is for you to help orphans, like me," replied Elsie. The Queen thought for a moment. "Well, after all that's happened, I can't hardly hurl you back onto the streets of London, can I?" Then a smile spread across the old lady's face. "All right, young Elsie, why don't you come and live with me here at Buckingham Palace? You can keep me company in my old age." "A splendid idea, Your Majesty," remarked Abdul. All eyes turned to the girl. I've got 25 friends, she replied. 25? Spluttered the Queen. Yes, they're all from the same orphanage as me. When I ran away, I promised I'd never forget them, and I haven't. What's the name of this orphanage? Wormley Hall, home for unwanted children. Sounds frightful. It is. And you ran away, Elsie? I had to, Your Majesty. The lady who ran it used to beat me in black and blue. I had to get out, or she would have killed me. The Queen took a deep breath. She could barely believe what she was hearing, but she knew this girl was sincere. What is the name of this lady, if indeed the creature can be called that? Mrs. Curdle, Your Majesty. Munchie? Yes, Your Majesty, replied Abdul. Have this Mrs. Curdle locked up in the Tower of London. With great pleasure, ma'am. A huge smile spread over Elsie's face. This story did have a happy ending after all. Sometimes it's wonderful being queen, said the Queen. And Munchie? Yes, Your Majesty. Send a fleet of my carriages to collect those poor orphans and bring them here to Buckingham Palace. All 25 of them, ma'am. The Queen gulped. Yes, all 25 of them. We have the room. At once, Your Majesty. With that, Abdul bowed and left. Of course, child, tonight is a very special night, began the Queen. Is it? Asked Elsie. After being at sea for weeks, the girl had completely lost track of the date. Yes, my child, it's New Year's Eve. At midnight, we welcome in a new century. As the year becomes 1900, perhaps you and your 25 friends would like to join me for a midnight feast as we watch the fireworks. Yes, please, Your Majesty. Splendid! I'll have my team of cooks lay on the feast. I can't wait to see them all again and tell them this incredible tale. I'm sure they've missed you, young lady. Elsie smiled and turned to look at Dotty before addressing the Queen again. Your Majesty? Yes, Elsie? Please can my friend Dotty come to the party tonight too? She really looked after me. She's been like a grandma, actually. I would like to see her in the new century with her. The Queen took a deep breath. Yes, all right. Dotty, you can come too, but please refrain from calling me Ham. Oh, thank you, Jam, replied the lady. Oops! Private Thomas was trying to catch Dotty's eye, to no avail. When that didn't work, he gave her a sharp poke with his elbow. What do you want? I'm talking to the Queen Majesty herself, the ruler of everybody and everything. Well, shouldn't the love of your life come too? Who's that? Me? I'll ask, replied Dotty. She put her hands in the air. Victoria, the Majesty. Yes, replied the Queen uncertainly. Please could Towering Thomas come to the party? She asked proudly. I won't take up too much space. You barely know him there, Your Majesty, added the man. Queen Victoria sighed loudly. Well, I suppose there's always room for more, she said. Thank you, ma'am, he replied. Just then the Admiral popped his hand in the air. Yes, asked the Queen. Ma'am, if I could be so bold, I have been an extremely close friend of Private Thomas's for many a year. No, you haven't, he corrected. Shut up, hissed the Admiral. And I would miss him terribly if I couldn't share this momentous night with him. The old Queen sighed. All right. Should I bring my own rum? I'm sure we have a barrel or two. Splendid! But what will everyone else drink? Anyone else want to come to the party? She asked. All the old soldiers started nodding their heads enthusiastically and murmuring in agreement. Oh, yes. Is it a buffet or sit-down thing? I can't stay too late. I really need to be back at the hospital before midnight. Yes, you can all come, exclaimed the Queen. Now please, everyone, leave immediately before I change my mind. You've never seen people exit the room so quickly. Chapter 78. Not a day goes by. Boom! Whiz! Kaboom! Fireworks danced in the sky over London. Those lucky enough to be on the top floor of Buckingham Palace had the best view. The elderly Queen was hosting quite a party. There were the 25 Wormley Hall orphans, all the Chelsea pensioners, Abdul, Dotty, and of course the guest of honour, Elsie. Fittingly, a huge Victoria sponge cake was served. It was so big that you could have dived into it, but it was demolished by the starving orphans in seconds. By the fireplace, Private Thomas got down on one knee to propose to his beloved. Dotty, will you marry me? Where are you? Asked the lady. Here! Dotty looked down and spotted him. Sorry, I didn't see you all the way down there. Dotty, will you marry me? Oh, I forgot to rinse me mops out. Dotty! The little man was becoming irate now. Will you marry me? There's no need to shout, dear. Yes! The pair kissed as everyone around them clapped and cheered. Hurrah! Bong! 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 12 bongs from Big Ben meant it was midnight. 1899 had ended and 1900 had begun. Everyone crossed arms and Queen Victoria led the singing of Auld Lang Syne. Should Auld acquaintance be forgot and never be brought to mind? Should Auld acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For a long sign, my Jo, for a long sign, we'll take a cup o' kindness yet, for a long sign. Robert Burns' words, for the memorable time, made Elsie think about Wooly. She missed her friend terribly. As she sang, a tear rolled down her cheek, and she stole away from the far side of the room so nobody would see her. Elsie didn't want to spoil the celebration for everyone else. Only the Queen saw that the girl was upset, and she broke away from the rest. The unlikely pair of friends found themselves alone in a corner, as fireworks illuminated them from the window. What is the matter, child? Added the Queen, softly, as she placed her hand in Elsie's. The song, it got me thinking about how much I miss Wooly. If truth be told, Auld Lang Syne always makes me a little tearful too, replied Queen Victoria, her old eyes becoming misty. It makes me think of my darling husband, Prince Albert. I lost him 38 years ago, but not a day goes by, not an hour, not a minute, when I don't think about him. It sounds like he was a very special man. Oh, he was. He was the most perfect gentleman in all the world. Elsie reached out her other hand to the old lady, who held it tight. See those fireworks, Elsie? Yes, ma'am. This is how it felt in my heart every time my darling Albert entered the room. That's beautiful, murmured the girl. It was real, in the end. We both loved, child, and had been given love in return. What more can you ask for life? I suppose so, replied the girl. I know so, Elsie. You may look around this place of mine, this country of mine, this empire of mine, which stretches out to 4 corners of the globe. I think I have everything, but believe me, child, you have nothing without love. The Queen picked up a glass of champagne for herself and handed a glass of lemonade to Elsie. To Albert, said Elsie. To Wooly, said the Queen. Clink! The end. The end. That's the end of this book, folks. If you enjoyed, please do not forget to like and subscribe and comment down below which book I should read down. I'll see you guys in the next book. Bye-bye.